Welcome to Sweet Valley Diaries, the podcast where dramatic personal growth is possible, but only for the side characters.
Well spoken, Marissa.
Thank you. I just thought of that just now in the bathroom. Hello, everyone, and Merry Christmas. If you celebrate, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year. I am here on hiatus, as you may know, but timing worked out perfectly to discuss a super edition book called...
Well, it is called Special Christmas.
Special Christmas, and in the rare possibility that you do not recognize the beautiful voice of my guest, it is superstar guest from episode 9? I guess it was 9 of Sweet Valley Diaries, none other than my own father, Don Flaxbart.
Hello, everyone.
So, as you might imagine, I am home with my father in Chicago for the holiday break, and I read Special Christmas on the plane from Los Angeles to Chicago in its entirety. The special edition books are longer than the regular books by a good 100 pages, although I noticed that all the books have 17 chapters.
Yeah, you pointed that out to me. I thought that was interesting. So numerology must mean something, like Sweet 17 or Sweet 16, I don't know.
17 is the age the Wakefield twins never reach.
That's true. This one you might wonder whether they've reached the age of 13, but anyway.
But sometimes they seem more like they're 25. We'll get into it. Yeah. So I got off the plane, got to my dad's place, and handed him this book and said something like, well, here's the opposite of a Christmas present. Because I knew that I was sacking him with many hours over his Christmas vacation of reading a book for preteen girls written in the 80s.
Yeah. So it was done, also on a plane, but that's another story.
All right. Well, thank you. So thank you, Dad, for being with me. Now, one thing that I think listeners might want to know, Dad, I don't know if you know this either, is that so far in the podcast, whenever we are talking about one of the Sweet Valley books, it is a book that I have read before, at least once. I've read through a lot of the regular series, but I have read very few of the super edition books. That was true for the last super edition we did, which was called A Perfect Summer. Similarly vague titling about a time of year. And it is also true for Special Christmas. So what I was expecting with Special Christmas was guided largely by the cover of the book. Can we talk about the cover?
Sure.
Here's the book.
I'm looking at the picture again now.
Now, I posted a picture of this to Instagram while I was reading it, and I got some comments from some followers there. On Instagram, I'm at Sweet Valley Diaries, if you're not following already. And people describe this as one of their favorite covers, and I can understand why. It's almost, I don't know, Norman Rockwell-y. They're so happy. The twins, it's the two twins.
Right. One's happy unwrapping the present, the other's happy watching her do it, So.
Yeah. So, I'm honestly not sure which twin is which in this picture, but two beautiful Wakefield twins, one of them is unwrapping a present.
I was thinking that Liz was the one in the white sweater simply because the way it's cut.
The way the sweater is cut is a conservative cut?
Yeah.
And then the girl in the sort of pinkish red collared shirt she has her hair down, and I think Liz tends to be pictured with her hair kind of pulled to the side a lot more often, but what is it that Liz is opening? I have no idea. And when exactly in the book did this moment occur? No clue.
Right.
So then, I'm standing at LAX, getting ready to start this book, and I crack open the cover, and I read the teaser, and I'm going to read it to you all now. This is something that we haven't talked about maybe ever on the show before, but the very first page of every Sweet Valley novel is a little bit of a pressy... a short recap of... recap's not the word, but it's an intro to what the story is going to be. And in this case, I think it's pulled directly from the pages of the book, but this is your trailer, essentially, for the book that you already have purchased from the store and are about to read. Unless you're at the store reading it. Maybe that's the point. Anyway, usually I think the back cover would be for that. But without further ado. Special Christmas. Steve, it's going to be the best Christmas ever, Elizabeth declared. Whoa, Stephen said, shaking his head sadly as he looked at the twins. I just found something out that made my Christmas spirit dry up in a flash. What is it? The twins exchanged anxious glances. What would you say if I told you that the abominable snowman is coming to stay with us, and there's nothing we can do about it? Elizabeth looked completely baffled. Steve, what are you talking about? Mr. Devlin, Stephen said, pronouncing the name as though it hurt to say it. Called from New York just after I got home. Go on, Jessica said. What did he say? He said, Stephen continued, that everything's all set. Suzanne will be arriving Sunday afternoon, and she'll be staying here for 2 whole weeks. Suzanne Devlin, Elizabeth said, her face draining of color. But, Steve, that's impossible. So, yes, if you did not listen to episode 11 of Sweet Valley Diaries, with my guests Will Stribling and Sinead Persaud, we talked about a book called Too Good to Be True, starring Suzanne Devlin. My dad, Dad, you didn't listen to that episode.
I did not listen to that episode, so the Devlin and Miss Suzanne is news to me.
Well, luckily, the entirety of, I think, like chapter 2 or 3 of this book explains everything about what happened with when Suzanne was in town. We probably don't have to go into it all. Listen to episode 11. But basically, the things that Suzanne did when she came to Sweet Valley to visit from New York, and the things that happened to Jessica when she was in New York, are things that maybe should preclude any return visits by Suzanne to the Wakefield family. And definitely left me feeling, as I started this book, that, oh no, like Suzanne's back again to ruin Christmas, just like the twins felt. Is that what you thought?
I think I thought, does this make any sense, is what I thought.
Well, yeah. So at the very beginning of the book...
So I was with the twins and their...
Yeah, we were both with the twins. Clever book this is, in a way. I don't have a ton of compliments for this particular book, but we'll get into that. But I will say that it cleverly had us thinking that Suzanne we were in for trouble. So the book starts, and the twins haven't found out yet about any of this. So we, the reader, know because the book spoiled it for us. But the twins are at high school, and they're really excited because it's the day before Christmas break. Now, there are some logistics here about how Christmas break is done in Sweet Valley that were really mind-boggling to me. Did you follow all of this, Dad?
I did not follow all this.
Well, so we learn, first of all, as the book starts, that Elizabeth and friends are sitting in Mr. Collins' classroom. So this is going to be the final Collins Watch 2018 of 2018. But Mr. Collins is described thusly. Mr. Collins was one of the most popular teachers at Sweet Valley High. Some of the girls insisted he looked like a movie star, but that wasn't the reason why he won the Best Liked Teacher award year after year. Mr. Collins was an excellent sport. He knew when to be stern and when to relax. And that day, with a big Christmas party in the gym ready to start any minute, he knew enough not to expect anyone to concentrate on the crucible.
He didn't know enough not to design the crucible, however. Of all things for Christmas season.
So there's this big Christmas party that happens at the end of school, right before Christmas break. And Elizabeth is in charge of Secret Santas. So Sweet Valley High has this big, elaborate Secret Santa thing that every student participates in. I don't know if it's just the junior class or what, but this book doesn't get into it. It's a kind of a Saved by the Bell thing where like only the characters that you know about or seem to be involved in the situation. But it seems like everybody gets a Secret Santa. Elizabeth is in charge of naming the Secret Santa committee, but you just draw names randomly from a hat. She doesn't get a Secret Santa, I don't think, because she knows all the names. Uh-huh. And at this party, everybody comes to a table where Elizabeth is sitting to draw a name, and Elizabeth finds out who everybody has and keeps a big chart. Then, this was what really confused me. People are expected to give Secret Santa presents to these kids who they got during Christmas break.
Yeah, and they're supposed to it's keep giving him gifts. Like it's more like an extended Hanukkah kind of gift giving.
Yeah, Hanukkah never mentioned in this book.
Oh well, how about the thing of having public school and having Secret Santas? That's a little bit out of this day and time. I mean, maybe our time. I mean,
well, if there are any non-Christians in the world of Sweet Valley, they are not acknowledged at all in this particular book. But neither is Christianity really in any way. It's all about Santa and the presents. So
yes.
So there is some discussion of the kinds of presents that people are getting from their Secret Santas during the break. But the other weird thing is that they set up at the beginning of the book that there's going to be this big reveal of everybody finds out who their Secret Santa is at the end of the Christmas time. Like, I don't know if it's on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve.
It's Christmas Eve. It's a dance.
It's a dance at Christmas Eve. School is not in session. And also it's at Bruce Patman's house.
Yeah, so it's a private dance. So I assume Bruce has to invite everybody. I don't know how this works. So.
Yeah, and Bruce is a senior, I think. So it must be the whole school. Like, so Bruce Patman has invited the whole school to his house. And it really makes you wonder, like, how many students go to this school?
Yes.
It's confusing, but there was a funny I could read a lot about the stuff that you get from your Secret Santa. There's this whole plot line where Jessica is in love with the German exchange student, Hans. And so she's sure that Hans has her, but Hans does
for no
not
good
have
reason,
her.
but
No.
she's just, nobody in town is suave enough as to have her spend Hans's. They're the gifts she gets are very suave.
Right. And of course, in the end, it turns out that Winston Egbert was her Secret Santa and Lila had Hans. So Jessica's stuck having to go to a fancy dinner with Winston while Lila gets Hans to cook her dinner at his house or her house or whatever. It's so romantic. But it's all, Elizabeth knows all along that Hans is Jessica's Secret Santa. So that's just sort of a background thread to the main storyline. But here's something, a fun little detail of the kinds of Secret Santa gifts people are giving. To understand this passage, you need to know that Aaron Dallas is now dating a girl named Patsy. These books, the timing of the special edition books were a little bit ahead of the main storyline in terms of what's serialized. So there's going to be, I guess I should say right now, if you're listening to this, and it's really important to you that the plots of the next few Sweet Valley High novels do not get spoiled for some reason, just hit pause until like a few more episodes go by and then listen in. But these books were written 30 years ago. You'll be okay. So anyway, back to the story. I got a 5-pound bag of red pistachio nuts today. Ooh, that's the wrong voice. I was doing a man voice. All of my voices kind of sound like man voices, though, since I'm still battling a really annoying congestion. But anyway, I got a 5-pound bag of red pistachio nuts today, Patsy said, giggling. Aaron is going to get jealous if my Secret Santa's this attentive all week. I got a coupon for a free back rub from mine, Aaron grinned. I can't wait to find out who it is.
Oh, yeah. How creepy is that to get a back rub from somebody you don't know?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you can either go either way in your imagination.
Yeah. Maybe we're supposed to think that Patsy is Aaron Dallas's Secret Santa?
I have no idea, but this is just quite the thing to offer somebody a back rub of Secret Santa. I mean, I can see how somebody would think that's fun in high school to tease somebody that way, but I can't see how one would be excited about getting that
from a stranger. It's like, who is it?
Anonymous stranger offering you a back rub. Yes.
Yeah. It's
like... because your body image is also good when you're in high school.
Well, if you're Aaron Dallas, you're the captain of the football team. He's not the captain of the football team, but he's the captain of something. He's a sports guy, so he's all cocky. I don't know. I guess I have to say that this pretty much concludes the fun and games portion of this book, because this is where things get really dramatic. I don't think either of us has the time or energy to go through all the twists and turns, but basically the Wakefields get home and we have a setup that the twins are very excited to have the best Christmas ever. And one of the things that Elizabeth is really excited about is... Spoiler alert. I gotta talk better. Spoiler alert. Todd Wilkins is coming home from Vermont.
Yes.
That's right.
Her old boyfriend who I guess is still her boyfriend, but that's the question.
So Todd has moved to Vermont with his family. I'm not happy about it. We're going to be entering a period of Sweet Valley High novels fairly soon during season 3 that is a dark time as far as I'm concerned. But Todd has moved to Vermont, and I kind of wish that I had read this book earlier, because some of the events that unfold between Todd and Elizabeth are pretty interesting, as we'll find out. But basically, Elizabeth and Todd have been talking on the phone, but Elizabeth's not sure where she and Todd stand anymore, and she knows that she needs to see him in person to really find out if the old spark is still there. But they still talk on the phone all the time, and they are excited to see each other.
Oh, yeah.
And Todd's going to come home, and he's staying at Ken Matthews' house with his parents.
Right, and I don't know who Ken Matthews is and why he's staying there, but apparently they're good friends.
I guess so. And Elizabeth has decided that she's not going to go with Ken and his dad to pick Todd up, because she wants to see Todd for the first time alone so they can spend some time alone together. But then that never happens. Like, Todd comes over, and they're going to have some private time, but they never really get it.
That already sounds a little bit dicey in terms of relationship. Like, you don't want to see your boyfriend because you want to set up the terms under which you do that. Like, if you're at the point in a relationship where you're manufacturing the situations in which you have to be together, you're got problems, you know?
Oh, yeah. But it does make sense for two 16-year-olds to, like, have come up with this plan. But they definitely don't carry through with it.
No.
And that's partly because of another, the most important wrinkle in this plot line, which is that Suzanne Devlin is at the Wakefield's house. So these twins find out about this, and of course they are livid, because when Suzanne was last in town, she gaslit everyone into thinking that Mr. Collins had, like, sexually assaulted her, if not worse. And also she stole Elizabeth's necklace and lied to the whole town about being a nice person, and then was found out and, like, shipped back to New York. It was not funny. It was not, like, a little something. No,
and she had, the means that she had done this was by offering to babysit in Elizabeth's place for their Mr. Collins' 6-year-old son.
His 6-year-old son, Teddy.
And so Elizabeth felt betrayed as well in this whole thing, implicated.
Yeah. Well, and for Elizabeth, it was a very personal thing, because she was really thought that Suzanne was her friend, and Mr. Collins is, like, her closest mentor. So, the whole situation was, she was just totally bamboozled, and it was really, like, scarring. So something that's kind of interesting about this book is we always talk about how there's no trauma in Sweet Valley, and here's a book where all of the old shit gets brought up, and it's, like, really, it's painful for people. That never happens.
It's painful, and it's intruding on their expectations for Christmas in a way that annoys them tremendously, but they still push on doing every single activity. It's kind of wild.
Yeah. So the really, really weird thing here is that the Wakefields don't really, like, they clearly have information about Suzanne that they are unwilling to disclose to their children. So the kids, like, demand, like, Stephen is home from college. Jess, Elizabeth, and Stephen, like, have a little powwow. They decide their tactic is going to be to really reason with their parents. Like, this is why it's not just us speaking from emotion. This is a terrible idea. And they go out for pizza, and the Wakefields are just like, her parents are going away to Switzerland or France or something, St. Moritz.
St. Moritz.
And she wanted to come here. She's so apologetic. She really wants to prove it to everyone that she apologizes and that she's changed. And they insist that it's all going to be cool. Here's the passage from early on in the book. Mrs. Wakefield says, "For whatever reason, she wants to come out here, and your father and I are asking you to give her another chance, for our sake as well as hers." Elizabeth blinked. Give Suzanne another chance? If it were anyone else, maybe, but not Suzanne. If they gave Suzanne another chance, she'd probably destroy the world.
Yeah. It's, the part that strikes me odd, considering what Suzanne did, is that the parents say, have the part, for our sakes, like, really? That must strike you really strange as the children thinking, oh, your parents want you to take back this person that made a mess of everything for their sake,
Well, and then the weirdest thing happens. We get a chapter that starts from Mrs. Wakefield's perspective. So this never happens. So we get an adult's perspective. Mrs. Wakefield, no other teenagers are with her, none of her kids. She's driving to the airport to pick up Suzanne. And we as the readers get this moment of dramatic irony where we learn that there is something seriously wrong with Suzanne.
Right. But we don't know exactly what.
We don't know what. And then when Suzanne comes home, she definitely seems really nice. Liz, Jessica, and Stephen have decided that they're going to be really rude to her because she doesn't deserve any better. But Stephen first, and then Liz to a certain extent, kind of cave on this because they get the sense that Suzanne really is apologetic. She's taken the time to have a talk with them. It takes Elizabeth a while, but Stephen, it doesn't take him too long. He's never met her before, so he has the least held against her. Jessica's never met her before either, but Jessica is not a particularly trusting person. When it comes, it takes one to know one, right? She knows a conniving bitch when she sees one, right?
Oh, yeah.
Or she thinks she does.
Yeah.
So we learn that something is very seriously wrong with Suzanne, and something medical, it seems. What do you think about this, just from a storytelling perspective, Dad? Like, what do you think about us learning this information rather than it being withheld? From
a storytelling thing, I thought it had promise and to work along a ways, and then it kind of blows up in the reveal. But we'll get to that.
Yeah. So one of the things that happens throughout this book is that Suzanne is seen taking a lot of pills, or like people think she's taking pills, and she seems weird. She seems woozy. She sleeps a lot. And when Todd first appears at the Wakefield's house and Suzanne and Todd see each other, Suzanne drops a crystal vase of flowers on the ground and it shatters everywhere.
Right.
And that's super weird. And she says that something about the medicine she takes makes it hard for her to hold on to things or something.
Right, yeah.
So it's all a little bit weird, but I think that maybe if we hadn't been told that it hadn't been hinted at that there was something wrong with her, we might also think that she's on drugs.
Yes, let's say the medicine she takes makes it hard for the readers to hold on to her.
But because we know there's something wrong with her, that definitely builds the tension for us, seeing especially Jessica work harder and harder to come up with these schemes to kind of prove to everyone once again that she's bad. Because Jessica works really hard to prove to everyone that Suzanne is bad. And she has a good reason for doing so.
Right. And Jessica has a boundless ability to reimagine the scenario she's invested in to accommodate all these facts that don't really fit in it with very well, and no ability at all to stand back. Is that Jessica's MO?
It is Jessica's MO, but I would say, the more things change, the more things stay the same. Is there a book in this entire series that the plot doesn't hinge around not talking to someone and actually asking them what's going on? This whole story, there's so much miscommunication and assumption that goes on, and it really drives a lot of bad shit.
Yeah, this is a comedy of errors with not quite as much comedy as one might expect.
Oh yeah, the errors are pretty sad.
Yeah.
So in order to understand, so Jessica initially just doesn't really trust Suzanne because of everything she's done. She has no reason to. Suzanne is bad. I agree with them. Suzanne did a really bad thing. Why should she just change? But she seems nice, and she seems genuinely remorseful, right? But Jessica kind of gets some of the other people in town, Winston and Aaron, Dallas, not primarily, to do sort of like an anti-Secret Santa to Suzanne.
Yes.
Where they write her mean letters. It's like bullying, and it's really mean, but Suzanne takes it really, really
Neat
hard.
letters, empty boxes, things like that.
Yeah. Also, Jessica comes up with a scheme to like hide gross stuff in the corners of her bedroom because Suzanne is sleeping in Jessica's room, but we never really hear about that happening.
And short sheeting her, my goodness.
Yeah, I only recently heard about short sheeting beds. I learned about that somewhat recently. To explain to the listeners what short sheeting a bed is.
Well, you just don't give them all the sheets. So I'm like, I don't know why it would be that. It's not like you're at a hotel. You're at somebody's house. Like, I'm missing a sheet, so you get another sheet.
There's a moment where, like, after the twins have schemed this, Jessica and Elizabeth and Stephen are asking, like, so what did you hear anything about the bed being short sheeted? What happened? And one of the twins is like, I saw her in there making the bed again. Like, yep, that's what you do.
That's what you do.
She didn't even complain. Yeah. But this is a woman that famously, in her first visit, offered to do the dishes at every turn. So, like, surprise, surprise. Even
and Jessica tried to get her to get Suzanne to do the dishes rather than help them decorate the tree, but that got nixed.
Oh yeah, well, and that was, she didn't want to take and hang up an ornament because she was afraid she was going to drop it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we need to get to the piece of this book that I hate the most, which is the part where before Todd shows up in Sweet Valley, Elizabeth and Todd are on the phone, and Elizabeth tells Todd that Suzanne is going to be here for Christmas. Like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And Todd is like, oh no, okay. And then we get this prolonged look into Todd's perspective, which is like, boy, maybe I should have said something to Elizabeth about this, but I ran into Suzanne at a ski lodge with my buddy recently, and Suzanne apologized to Todd. The buddy was like trying to get with her. Suzanne apologizes to Todd, and they go for a walk, and the next morning they come back to the lodge and have coffee, and they have some kind of what the book describes as like a bit of a moment. Like, Todd has this thought, like, her face was so close to his and it would have been so easy to lean forward and kiss her. Nothing happens between them, but there's some kind of a romantic spark.
Well, yes, although it's not totally clear that it was mutual. It was clearly on his part.
Yeah.
And that's clearly the motivation why he didn't want to do anything. But in terms of the actual storyline of what happened in this thing, nothing really happened. And, so it's all his guilt, basically, about the way he felt that he doesn't want to admit. It seems to me he could have totally, in a healthy relation, said, hey, I ran into so-and-so,
Right. And so it's clearly like he has feelings for her. If he didn't have feelings for Suzanne, or like, even if they were just like, I don't know, desires for Suzanne when he ran into her, he wouldn't have hesitated to tell Elizabeth about it.
Right, because Elizabeth doesn't seem to me the kind of jealous type of character. She seems supposed to,
It varies from book to book.
Oh, okay.
But... Yeah, but I'm actually pissed at Todd about this. So this girl, she comes to your town and wreaks total havoc. She does all these completely heinous things. You see her a few months later and she seems nice again, and suddenly you fall in love with her? That's crazy.
It's pretty crazy. I guess one can say the hormones are rushing or something, because they are young.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, there's no way, Todd, that you were like, oh, you know what? She's actually a wonderful person. And the book doesn't even try to make it seem like that. It seems like he just has a crush on her now because she's beautiful. Well, we've always known she's beautiful. Although the book does repeatedly describe her as even thinner than before, when I think the first book described her as having like no fat on her body. Yeah. So it's all gross. I'm mad.
Well, I think you should be mad. I mean, it would have been, even as a story, it would have been more plausible if he was attracted to her as some kind of exciting femme fatale. He knew she was bad, but she was beautiful or something. And he's 16 and like, wouldn't that be fine to see, if we can tickle the devil or whatever it was.
No, I don't like that. So
creepy.
So. Anyway, so that kind of brings us back to the moment when Todd walks into the house. Suzanne and Elizabeth hasn't told Suzanne that Todd's coming. I don't think. Nobody has.
No.
So they see each other. Suzanne drops the vase, and then like Todd has this private conversation with Suzanne where he's like, "Just so you know, I never told Elizabeth that we ran into each other. So don't say anything because it's going to make me look bad." Jessica overhears that little conversation, part of it only.
Right.
And so what she hears makes her think that they have a secret that they're not going to tell Liz.
Yeah, well, as I read it, I thought she imagines even more that they're kind of having a romantic affair of some level.
Yes. Right? And just when Jessica thinks that maybe she's making all of that up and it's all in her head, she picks up a phone extension and hears that Susanna's already on the phone with Todd. This is a few days later. And Todd is saying something to her about that night that you asked me to come back to the lodge.
Yes.
Which is a very incriminating thing to overhear in Jessica's defense.
Right. Very convenient thing to overhear.
Yeah. I don't say the words in Jessica's defense very often. So she overhears that and she thinks, oh my God, like, they met somewhere and Suzanne asked him back to the lodge, but like what really happened was like, come back in the morning and we can see each other again before you leave. And I can explain, not just that we can see each other, but like I can explain to you how sorry I am about everything that happened. So it was like, it was chaste.
Yeah.
But this drives Jessica to do even more scheming.
Yeah, she's in overdrive most of the book. We hadn't even gotten to her Lila Fowler part of it.
Well, what's the Lila Fowler part of it?
Oh, about all the stuff with the elves.
Oh my gosh! Okay. So I can't believe I forgot. Oh, you guys, I read this book like over a week ago now. The Lila Fowler part. This is actually great. This is so good. You want to describe it?
No, Lila. They're both just super driven to be Miss Christmas Time.
Christmas Time.
You get to ride on a float.
There's so much going on in Sweet Valley around Christmas.
And it's so competitive that Lila Fowler goes off to a $500 a day spa to lose weight so she can win the contest. But she also gets Kara, Jessica's friend, to set Jessica up so that she's...
Kara calls Jessica and says, I am sick and can't go to volunteer as an elf at the mall. Jessica says, okay, I can do it. She thinks it's for some kind of a sorority thing, and it's going to make the sorority look bad if there's not a volunteer.
The sorority does this every year.
So Jessica agrees to go to the mall to help Santa as an elf, which never seemed like a volunteer job to me. I listen to David Sedaris' Santaland Diaries almost every year. That was a paid job. That's the whole point. But if you haven't listened to that, listen to it. It's amazing.
These are high school students, right?
They are high school students.
And it's not odd to have sororities in high schools, maybe?
Oh, it's super odd.
Oh, okay.
I think. Every guest that reads about it makes that comment. So it seemed odd to me. But it's important for as a plot device for things like this. So Jessica says, I can volunteer, but I have to be done in time to go to the Miss Christmas Time auditions. You know, it's really they have to answer some questions. I think there's like a swimwear competition. It's like a weird, like judged by a small panel, some kind of Miss Christmas Time, like a miniature beauty pageant. I don't know. It must be kind of like being named the Fair Queen or whatever at the state fair. And so she shows up. Kara assures Jessica it's just a few hours. So she shows up and helps out, and she puts on this absurd costume that she's made herself out of a trash bag.
Of a trash bag, a green trash bag, so she can look like an elf.
She fills the trash bag with like tissue paper so the pants puff out.
And
she has curly shoes.
And she paints her face green.
Which is not really part of the elfin picture that I have in my head. But
no, and it's also kind of, you think, and then you're going to somehow get all this off and get your makeup on for the 3 o'clock meeting to try out.
Yeah,
for the
you really
queen.
set yourself up for a disaster here. But she turns out she was set up for a disaster by Lila and Kara. Kara didn't realize. She thought it was just like a prank, which is dumb. Like, nice fun, Kara. But Lila really was using Kara as a pawn to get Jessica stuck at the mall so she couldn't come, even try to become Miss
Christmas Time.
And she's successful. Jessica, to her credit, will not abandon Santa and the children at the mall. Handing out presents is actually what they're doing.
Yes, what she does.
So I guess that's why it's a volunteer thing. It's not like sitting on Santa's lap. It's like something they're doing for underprivileged children. And
Which would be a creepy thing for an elf to do, I have to say.
What do you mean?
For elf to sit on Santa's lap?
Oh, no, I didn't mean the elf was going to sit on Santa's lap. I mean the kids were going to sit on Santa's lap. And the elf was just, like, helping. Like in the aforementioned Santaland Diaries, the elves, like, lead the children to Santa.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's not what's happening. But the point is that Jessica's not Miss Christmas Time. And what this means, above all, is that she does not get to ride on the Christmas parade float and wave in Santa's car as Miss Christmas Time. On Santa's float, I mean.
But Santa's going to make it up to her how?
By letting her ride on his float.
As?
An elf. So she gets to... So when Santa finds out what happens, the mall Santa, he is, like, so sad for her that he lets her... He's like, you can be on the parade after all. You can ride on my float.
Dressed as a trash bag with a green face.
Yeah, in your trash bag elf costume with the green face.
Just that is some consolation prize.
Yeah. Does Santa really understands 16-year-old girls? So this, just to wrap this up, and then we'll get back to the less fun storyline. Jessica almost immediately comes up with the scheme to get back at
Another
Lila.
scheme, folks.
She's going to sneak in to the dressing room where Lila puts on her Miss Christmas Time dress right before she gets on the float. I don't know why there's a dressing room, but there is. It's important to the story. And she's going to steal Lila's dress and make it so the only outfit left behind is the elf costume. Then Lila will have no choice but to ride with Santa as the elf, and Jessica will be Miss Christmas Time.
Because this plan could not go wrong.
But the thing is, it works. She pulls off her ruse and gets the dress and rides in the place of Miss Christmas Time. And the craziest thing to me is not only that does Lila put on the elf costume as if she didn't have other clothes to wear, she puts on the green face paint.
Yeah. The paint, the face of shame.
Can you see her in the locker room? She's looking around. Her dress is nowhere to be seen. And she's like, oh no, I see, all that's left behind for me is a garbage bag and some green face paint. Well, I guess I've got no choice. You got me again, Jessica.
I just was gobsmacked on this thing. They said, so here is, the book describes Jessica and Lila as dearest friends and arch rivals. Like, holy cow, this is supposedly this big event and you're screwing each other over and somehow you're going to remain friends? Like, I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, they've gotten over worse before, but I guess maybe they never actually make up. Maybe they're just always enemies, that they hang out together.
Yeah, I mean, they have weak memories, but constantly held grudges. It's kind of...
Back to Suzanne. Like, let's talk about the worst scheme. The scheme that gets her. Which is that after Jessica... My dad's making a terrible face.
Another Jessica scheme.
Yeah. So Jessica's scheming this time after she's overheard this phone call between Todd and Suzanne and assumes that they are having an affair. And also she is sure that Elizabeth would be heartbroken if she and Todd ever broke up. Because she asks Elizabeth at one point, how would you feel if Todd said he wanted to start dating someone else? And Elizabeth doesn't really respond. And Jessica fills in the blank. She'd be heartbroken. But the thing is, Elizabeth is feeling about Todd right now like, I don't know. I don't know what we are to each other. Like, we were so close. We're like best friends. But now he's not around, and I don't know if the old spark is there. And then they don't get to spend any time together, really.
Right. And they also say that they've never gone through any difficulties as a couple, so they don't really know how strong their relationship is. Everything is just always smooth sailing.
No, I call bullshit on that, because Elizabeth was in a damn coma after Todd crashed his motorcycle. Yeah. So, but whatever, book, you can rewrite history if you want. Elizabeth and Todd, like, they can get over, like, car crashes, but they can't get over long-distance relationships. So,
well, we'll come back to that thought at the end of this book, because they're already rewriting this book at the end.
Yeah, they're backpedaling on everything. So, basically, Jessica is so angry with Todd and Suzanne about how they're hurting Elizabeth, that she ensnares Aaron Dallas into her scheming. And Aaron Dallas was also badly embarrassed by Suzanne when she was here before. So he is going, basically she comes up with this whole plan. Aaron is going to invite Suzanne to come to a Christmas party with him as his date, I guess, which is weird because he has a girlfriend, but whatever. At his brother's house, and then he's going to give Suzanne an address of like an abandoned house. Yep. And he's going to call her and tell her that he's sorry something came up and he can't pick her up. Meet her there. And so Suzanne is going to show up at this abandoned house while everybody else is having fun, and she's going to be really disappointed because she finally will think that somebody wants to be friends with her.
Which she does think, she's...
Yeah.
That gives her hope that it's not all lost in Sweet Valley in terms of making amends. But
Jessica isn't really even imagining that Suzanne could possibly be feeling sad about being treated badly. Like, she mostly thinks that Suzanne is just trying to steal Aaron Dallas away from his girlfriend. Like, she's just trying to, like, use her witchy powers on all men everywhere, which is what Suzanne's MO in her book. So... whatever. But then that plan works. I guess I was started that sentence and I wasn't sure where I was going with it, but that they're all going to go to Bruce Patman's Christmas party.
I know. This is a high school. It's easy to come up with accomplices and schemes.
Yeah. So the night that... Oh, okay. So here's what's important to know. Suzanne has been taken to a pharmacy to pick up a vial of a new prescription that her doctor prescribed to her.
Right.
And she opens the package with the prescription, and there's no instructions.
Right.
So she tries to call the doctor's office, but it's closed. It's 3 hours later there. So she's like, shrugs her shoulders and is like, I guess I'll just treat it like all my other pills and just take one.
Right. Because Suzanne's from New York.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Suzanne goes downstairs, and the Wakefields are popping a bottle of champagne. And there's this crazy moment, I thought it was crazy, where Suzanne thinks to herself, like, well, the doctor never said I couldn't drink alcohol at all. He just said I should limit myself to 1 or 2 glasses of wine.
Yeah, so here's somebody's 16 something.
She's 16.
The doctor's saying, yeah, have a few. It's okay with me.
I mean, I know she's from New York and her, like, society friends do drink a lot, but just the thought of the doctor being like, now, Suzanne, when you take this pill, limit yourself to 1 or 2 glasses of wine a day.
Where do you find these doctors that say what you need is a few more drinks?
Yeah.
Maybe not so much when you come of age, but right now it's good.
We also know that Suzanne is not a competent driver because she never has to drive in New York.
Right.
Which is believable. So the Wakefields are popping champagne and drinking it, and she drinks the glass. Then she gets the call from Aaron Dallas saying, I can't pick you up. Please, please meet me. And she hesitates, but she's like, okay, it'll be fun. Maybe Christmas won't be so bad after all.
Supposedly, the part of the plan is that his car's had a flat.
Oh, yeah, he had a flat tire. So she goes and drives away, and then the doctor calls, right? Her doctor returns the message that she left for him.
Yeah, just logistically, it's a little bit strange that they're going to give her a car to drive when the other part of the book is they have only 2 cars, it seems to me, and everybody has to get to all these parties, but oh well.
Yeah. So, one of the Wakefield parents answer the phone and is like, yes, oh no. And then they come back and they're like, where's Suzanne? And it turns out that the doctor has called to say it is very important that Suzanne not mix this pill with alcohol. Because if she does, well, I'll tell you what if she does. So Mr. Wakefield desperately is asking where she is and that she's going to go to Aaron's party and probably drink at Aaron's party. And so Mr. Wakefield is like, oh, we've got to go get her at Aaron's right now. And Jessica starts freaking out and says, Daddy, Jessica moaned, tears filling her eyes. Susie didn't go to Aaron's. It was all a lie. What are you talking about? Mr. Wakefield shouted. Jessica, what in God's name is happening here? Suzanne's life may be at stake. Jessica burst into tears. She's driving out to the haunted house on Forest Lane, she sobbed. Aaron and I tricked her. She thinks she's driving out there to meet him, but there won't be anyone there. Jessica, how could you do such a thing? Mr. Wakefield demanded. Never mind, he added shortly. We've got to find her. With a combination of medication and alcohol in that girl's body, she'll be lucky if she makes it there alive.
Let's just say that as this part of the story was written, it struck me as kind of wooden because they were underlining everything that could happen, you know?
It's a little alarmist, but turns out, she skidded her car off the road on the way to Aaron, so on the way to the haunted house.
She flipped the car, but the car wasn't severely damaged.
Yeah, she flips the car. Don't worry, everybody. The Fiat's fine. And she starts swerving on the road, and some cops are following her.
Yes.
But when the Wakefields find the Fiat, all they find is a flipped over Fiat and no Suzanne. So they're like, they don't know if she's alive or dead. They call her parents in St. Moritz.
They can't leave a voice message first. They can't get her parents.
Oh, yeah. I had a flashback to that horrible moment. I've actually talked to you before on the show about when I had to leave a voice message for you about having been in a car accident. And oh my God, my dad's going to come home to this. But I was fine. I was too young to refuse on my own to be taken to the hospital. So anyway. That was scary. And the parents fly back from St. Moritz, and Suzanne is in the hospital, and nobody can see her, and her doctor is going to fly out from New York. And this is where we learn what is truly wrong with Suzanne. Are you ready?
Oh, well, I guess
Would you like to read it?
Oh, sure. Okay. Daddy, Jessica said in a small voice, what's wrong with Suzanne? Is she very sick? Mr. Wakefield was quiet for a minute. Yes, Jessica, he said reluctantly. I'm afraid she's a very sick young lady. She has a disease called multiple sclerosis, or MS as it's sometimes called, which attacks the central nervous system. What will happen to her? Elizabeth asked, her mouth dry. Isn't there a cure? Mr. Wakefield shook his head. No, not yet, but they're working on it. As far as what will happen, it's hard to say. Every case is different. Some people have the disease in a very mild form. Suzanne may go into remission and remain in remission for months, even years, or, go on, Jessica whispered, or she may continue to suffer from attacks of dizziness and loss of vision. She may be less and less able to control her muscle spasm. It's possible she could be confined eventually to a wheelchair.
So, Suzanne has MS, and so that's upsetting. And we find this out on page, 200 of the book, 202. The book is, 220 pages long. And at about page 226, we find out that the doctor was wrong.
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, let's just say, the symptoms are described here are symptoms you can have with MS. But when I was reading the book, I said almost every person I've ever known who got such a diagnosis was in their late 20s or through their 40s. I don't know what the range is, but she's very young for this type of diagnosis. And so I want to say that bit. But what she really has, do you want to do the reveal?
No, you're going to have to do it because I don't
remember. She has mononucleosis, the kissing disease. Yes, folks, her stupid doctor, who this rich family pays big bucks, can't make a distinction between mononucleosis, a common viral disease, and multiple sclerosis. Very odd for somebody her age. My goodness.
They do rhyme, though. The diseases rhyme.
Well, and there is some statistical evidence. I actually looked this up on Wikipedia that the virus that causes mono may increase one's chances of giving MS, but MS is very difficult to diagnose.
And the book tries to kind of say, like, the symptoms that you had, your form was this rare sort of dormant form of it, and kind of, like, explain how this mistake could happen. But basically, Suzanne's prolonged symptoms and this whole, like, personal reevaluation that she's gone through with her parents, like, changing their relationship in the face of this terrible disease, the symptoms are primarily a result of the medication she's been taking.
Yeah.
Which is tons of medication. So this, it explains why she's so sleepy, I guess. But that could also be the medicine.
Yeah, I mean, so she's just an overdrugged girl with mono. I mean, and this is, well.
So, I don't know. I mean, that's basically the end of the story, except that when they find out that Suzanne has MS, and when they find out that she was in this car accident, Todd is in the car because they're all going to the Christmas party together. And everybody looks at Todd's face and they know that, like, Jessica thinks the only other time I've seen Todd look this frightened was when Elizabeth was in that terrible car accident and they didn't know if she'd live or die. And that shows Jessica that Todd truly has feelings for Suzanne. And Todd also is really upset and like a little bit, shocked, clearly like in shock about the MS diagnosis, and everybody can tell that Todd must really be in love with Suzanne to care so much or to be affected so much by this, which is also a little weird. But Elizabeth and Todd like have a talk about it, and Elizabeth is very much like, okay, oh, all right, that's great. I don't really like you anymore. So, I mean, that's not what they say. They say they're going to be best friends forever and nothing will ever change that. But they basically have like the most like placid, like mutual breakup of any couple in history. And then they dance and Elizabeth's like, I'm so happy at this Christmas party. I'm dancing with my best friend and it's Christmas and there's music.
Oh, and then the girls get together and say, despite everything that happened, this was one of the best Christmases ever.
Allow me to read on page 223. Elizabeth smiled at her twin. Merry Christmas, Jess, she whispered. Jessica engulfed her twin in a bear hug. Merry Christmas, Liz, she sang out. Elizabeth said, linking arms with her sister as they looked around to see whom they could ask for a ride home. It had some strange parts, but this Christmas hasn't really been that bad so far. No, Jessica agreed, trying not to meet Winston's eye as he hurried toward them, car keys jangling in his hand. It hasn't been bad at all.
They haven't been watching the same thing we've been watching, is all I've got to say.
Yeah, so that's a special Christmas. Let me find real quick here. I had a Valley of the Barbie Dolls on Instagram sent me a message that I can't find right now, so I'm going to paraphrase, that basically just said, this book just proves what terrible parents the Wakefields are. Yeah. Like, should these people be allowed to have children? Because they maintain, even when the kids press them, like, Daddy, is something wrong with Suzanne? Like, is that why she's always taking those pills? Or basically, they give her an opportunity to, like, spare Suzanne further torment and really turn the tides in Suzanne's favor. And the parents are like, we are not going to betray Suzanne's trust by explaining to you what's going on with her. So they refuse to tell their children what's wrong with Suzanne. It's not in Suzanne's interest for them to keep this secret. I really don't think so. What do you think?
Well, I mean, if you've made that kind of promise, I guess you feel self in the bind. I mean, for me, the odder thing is that they agreed to have her come.
Yeah.
I mean, given all the history and that she seemed duplicitous and sweet the first time, like, you're setting everybody up. That seemed a strange thing to start with. To make the promise on top of it was even more bizarre.
Yeah, and the reasoning was like, well, she wanted to be able to prove to you that she had changed and have your forgiveness without your pity or something like that. Like, she didn't want their pity.
Well, I can understand someone not wanting the pity, but...
Yeah, me too.
What about Suzanne's parents? That seems a strange thing for me to do. Is if somebody has an
a serious
unclarified diagnosis that you're trying to treat, and what do they think their daughter's going to do out there after she's done all this damage? Is she trying to restore her reputation or make people like her? What's the point of it all?
Like, who cares, too?
Yeah.
Like, why does Suzanne even care other than just, like, feeling bad about it if all of the town of Sweet Valley forgives her? She lives on the opposite side of the entire United States.
Yeah.
Like, she never has to see any of these people again.
Yeah, it's kind of odd. I mean, I can see perhaps somebody who was much, much older looking back on the whole course of their life saying, I'd like to make amends and stuff, but that she could go through that so quickly and say, that's what I want to do. That seemed kind of far-fetched to me.
So Todd, at the end of the book, is left like he's going to tell Suzanne how he feels, and the twins walk into the room, and the swim team has all shown up to sing serenades, and like the whole high school has shown up in Suzanne's room. Todd and Suzanne are like holding hands, and then they unhold hands.
And in case you missed it all, she has mono.
Right. Yeah.
The kissing disease.
Yeah, so careful with that, Todd. Also, Todd and Suzanne, if they go into this relationship further, they also are going to be in a long-distance relationship because Vermont and New York are not the same place.
No, not at all.
They're closer than Vermont and Sweet Valley, but they're not the same place. So Todd's just getting himself into further trouble here. So, but you know what? It's okay because it's the best Christmas ever. Oh, special.
Well, they did throw enough into this bag of Christmas gifts that we paid attention, so that's good.
That's true. Well, and Dad, you gave me a tremendous Christmas gift by taking hours out of your life to read this book and record the podcast, so thank you. Among the many gifts you give me, this was a real sacrifice.
I have to say it's the only book I've ever read where a teenage girl puts on a trash bag to look like an elf.
I would have to say the same.
Yeah, although I'm not so sure I wouldn't buy an issue of Cosmo that had that how to do that. That would be interesting.
So, Merry Christmas to everyone. It is currently the 4th day of Christmas as we record this. It'll probably be the 5th or the 6th as it's released, and who knows when you're listening to this, but happy holidays, happy New Year. The show will be back in the winter of 2019 with more episodes, and my dad has something to say.
May all your Christmases or holidays not look like this.
Yeah, I hope your very best, happiest Christmas doesn't involve car crashes and flips and mono and MS, and you're breaking up with your boyfriend your very serious boyfriend. Oh my God, I wish there were a way to have left that plot line out of this episode, but there really wasn't. And, your parents lying to you, and also you not getting to be Miss Christmas Time, and having to put on green face paint, and tricking your best friend into doing the same, or your second best friend, and all of the other things that made this Christmas time so great for the Wakefields.
So special.
So special. It was definitely special. So, happy holidays. Even on hiatus, you can still send me an email, sweetvalleydiaries@me.com. You can follow me on Instagram @sweetvalleydiaries or on Twitter @sweetvalley. And take this time during hiatus to write me a review on iTunes. Give me 5 stars as a rating would be also cool. It will never not seem weird to say that, but 5-star ratings are helpful. 4-star ratings that say the show is amazing are less helpful. I have one of those. Was that you, Dad?
It was not me.
Okay.
I have not engaged in this.
Oh, well, help me out, Dad.
Oh, okay.
It's much easier than reading an entire book and recording a podcast. And without further ado, we will sign off and look forward to book number 21, Runaway, coming at you sometime in the new year. Bye.
So does that make me Miss America?
Special